there's no question that businesses are being negatively impacted by Obamacare. Now, they are not the only ones. Average Americans, their families, are also feeling the pain thanks to the healthcare overhaul train wreck. And 6 of them, they're here with us tonight to tell their story, which, by the way, the media ignores.
We've been talking about the feigned concern conservatives are showing for Obamacare and its implementation. But the most infamous example of this kind of thing, the crown jewel of conservative healthcare concern trolling, comes from that Sean Hannity special earlier this month. And not simply because of the outright falsehoods that were told about the healthcare law, but because after Hannity brought on those average Americans, the 3 couples, to tell their Obamacare horror stories, something about it just didn't ring true. Eric Stern, a contributor to Salon.com, saw the show and decided to pick up the phone, do some reporting. He spoke to the actual guests and discovered their worries, well, had some holes. Stern first talked with Paul Cox, who, along with his wife, Michelle, told Hannity Obamacare was limiting the growth of their business.
You'd like to hire full-time employees.
We would love to.
But so you're going to keep them below 30 hours.
We'd have to keep them below 30 hours or we wouldn't be able to, not that we wouldn't want to pay it, we just wouldn't be able to stay in business and pay it.
The provision of Obamacare they're talking about here, requiring all full-time workers be offered health insurance from their employers, only applies to businesses with 50 or more employees. Stern wrote that Mr. Cox revealed his company has only 4 employees, or in other words, their company will not be affected by that provision in Obamacare. So what was with all the talk about cutting back workers and accruing costs? There was a long pause, wrote Stern when he asked him this, after which he said he'd call me back. He never did. Next, Stern called up Kurt and Allison Denice, who said this to Hannity.
We don't even have insurance for our daughter, who has a pre-existing condition, so we're looking at probably $20,000 in premiums next year.
$19,000?
Yeah.
Which is how much higher than what it was?
Well,
twice as high?
Twice as high.
Stern reported that assuming the couple didn't smoke and was eligible for subsidies, they would get a plan for less than $8,000 a year through Obamacare, which would include their daughter and her pre-existing condition. Finally, Stern spoke to the last of 3 couples, Robbie and Tina Robinson.
Our new policy that we can have won't have the same benefits to it. Anything similar, though, is going to rise between like 50 to 72%, and it'll have things in it that we have no choice, like we'll have to have maternity benefits, and we're not planning on having any more kids.
After that couple told Eric Stern they had no plans to go on healthcare.gov and actually look for a better deal because they oppose Obamacare in principle, want nothing to do with it, Stern took it upon himself and found them a plan that's more than 60% less than their current bill. I'm pleased to be joined now by Eric Stern from Salon.com, also Deputy Secretary of State for Montana, Senior Counsel to former Governor of Montana, Democrat Brian Schweitzer. And Eric, you write in the piece that something about watching this did not sit right with you. What was it?
Based on what I know about the act, about the Affordable Care Act, it just didn't sound right. Nothing that these people were saying sounded like they were really, it really would matter come January 1st. And basically, so it just had a funny smell to it. And so I basically I Googled them and I searched them and I picked up the phone and I had a series of conversations with them. And generally, they're pretty helpful. And, I want to make clear, they are pessimistic about the Affordable Care Act. They believe it's going to be a train wreck, for lack of a better expression. And so I don't know that they were being dishonest. Paul Cox, maybe. But generally speaking, I think they're just afraid. And the real fault lies with Hannity for trying to claim that these people represent the train wreck. It's ridiculous.
Well, what you have to do if you're producing that show, right, is you have to vet that the stories of the people that are coming on your show to tell you this are actually what they say they are and actually fit under something that Obamacare changes or would make worse.
Right. And obviously, they didn't, Hannity's producer didn't do his homework. Hannity obviously didn't ask basic questions of anybody prior to running the story. And I think it's inexcusable. I think you got to do some basic work if you're going to go, in front of however many viewers he has. I don't know, 2, 3 million. You got to do homework.
Okay, here's the thing that I found so fascinating about the episode is I remember this period in time when Dick Cheney was sort of planting seeds about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and he was running this crazy information laundering operation, which he would plant a story, through Judith Miller, it would appear in the New York Times. He'd go on Meet the Press and cite something in the New York Times, and a lie would sort of reinforce itself. And what you're seeing here is these three people, my sense from your reporting is these are conservatives, they're Fox News viewers, they're getting a lot of information about Obamacare from actually watching Fox, reading the conservative media, and then they're going on Fox to give their real-life testimonials based on not information about how they're actually interacting with the law, but based on the tales they've been told on Fox itself.
Yeah, that's correct. In other words, they're in an echo chamber, and there's a fenced-in garden around the whole thing, and there is this enormous section of America that basically just wants to listen to Fox and hear, they want to be up in arms about something, and they want to be outraged about Obama. And it gets to the point where it's no longer advocacy. If Hannity wanted to be an advocate against Obamacare, there's a lot of arguments he could make. There's a lot of research he could do. He could do stories about, for example, why the exchange crashed, or why it wasn't working. I think that there's a lot of, I would be interested in that story if he did that, because I would like to see somebody who is sort of, I like adversarial journalism, but this is just a made up thing. It's not even advocacy journalism. It's literally just made up out of whole cloth, and it's nonsense, and he ought to be ashamed of it.
You said one of the people you talked to, Mr. Cox, I believe, you feel like he did kind of know that what was happening, what didn't actually comport with what was being communicated on the program.
No, I mean, I think he said he doesn't want to hire, he's keeping his workers part-time. He doesn't want to go full-time with them. He has 4 employees because he is concerned about costs. Now, he could argue that he has some sort of global concern about these sort of general costs to everybody about Obamacare coming down the pike. But it's not really.
It's not the employer mandate.
That's not,
and what that points out to is employers have been keeping people part-time or not growing for years, and now they have this wonderfully convenient excuse in Obamacare, which they are invoking any chance they get. And I have heard that up and down the line. Salon.com contributor Eric Stern, thanks so much for joining us tonight. There is big news today on a story that has the whole country talking. The latest from Maryville, Missouri, coming up.